Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bradley, and I will be your moderator. Thank you for joining us today for the final webinar in our series with Stan Garfield, Profiles in Knowledge, Part 4, Innovation, Learning, Personal Knowledge Management, Sense Making, and Story and Narrative. Before we start, I would like to provide some information about our company and introduce today's presenter. Lucidea is a software developing company specialized in museum and archival collections management solutions, as well as knowledge management and library automation systems. Our brands include Sydney, Presto, Argus, Archivera, Eloquent, and Quadrastar. Now I would like to take a moment to introduce today's presenter, Stan Garfield. Stan is a respected knowledge management practitioner, author, speaker, and community leader. He has provided us with many great webinars that are listed on our website, so please feel free to check those out after today's session. Take it away, Stan.
Thanks, Brad. And as you mentioned, many webinars. This actually is the 40th webinar that I've done for Lucidea over the years. And it's the fourth and final one in this current series on profiles in knowledge. That series has been profiling 120 men and women, 60 of each, and grouped into 20 categories. And each webinar has had 5 categories. We'll have 5 more today. And then later this year, the book based on these 120 thought leaders will appear. And a reminder that as we go through that, there's a lot of content in here to cover in an hour. The slides that show the thought leadership pieces for each of the thought leaders have a lot of detail on them. What I encourage you to do is to come back and review the webinar at your leisure, pause the recording, take a look at any of the slides you want. And then when the book comes out later this year, get a hold of that through Lucidea, and it will have all of this content available to you in written form. Today we're going to talk about innovation, learning, personal knowledge management, sense making, and story and narrative. Starting with innovation, and the themes we're going to cover include knowledge dynamics, the knowledge innovation zone methodology, open and closed innovation, cross-boundary teaming, incremental versus radical innovation, the private collective innovation model, and rapid innovation. And our thought leaders are Deborah Amadon, Danielle Chauvel, Amy Edmondson, Vincent Ribiere, and Georg von Krogh. Late Deborah Amadon was the founder and chief strategist of Innovation International, which was a global innovation research and consulting network. She was also the former associate director of external research at Digital Equipment Corporation. And her specialties included knowledge innovation zones, intellectual capital, global innovation strategy, and with other items that you see listed here. She certainly had a wide range of interests, but innovation really was at the forefront of what Deborah found fascinating. She wrote a number of books. Here are pictures of 4 of them: Innovation Strategy for the Knowledge Economy, The Ken Awakening, The Innovation Superhighway, Creating the Knowledge-Based Business, and Collaborative Innovation and the Knowledge Economy. Deborah has a couple of items of thought leadership I'd like to feature today. One is called The 3 Laws of Knowledge Dynamics. One being knowledge in the form of intellectual capital is a multiplier of economic wealth. 2, the innovation value is created when knowledge moves from origin to the point of highest need or opportunity. And 3, collaboration for mutual leverage provides the best utilization of tangible and intangible resources. And then she shows above a progression from the 50s through the 70s, 70s to 90s, and then up into the 21st century, featuring knowledge, innovation, and collaboration. A second picture from Deborah is her P7 Knowledge Innovation Zone methodology, moving from a design phase to a development phase, and finally into a deployment phase. Our second innovation thought leader is Danielle Chauvel. She is a retired research professor in knowledge management on the faculty of the Schema Business School in Sophia Antipolis, France. Her specialties include knowledge management, innovation, leadership, change management, team management, and human and organizational dynamics. And her research interests included the sociology of knowledge, the role of knowledge in organizational development, organizational issues related to knowledge work, creation, and evaluation, the evolution of our field in knowledge management as a lever of innovation, and innovation management and the knowledge economy. Danielle's books include Leading Issues in Innovation Research, Knowledge Horizons, the Present and the Promise of Knowledge Management, and the innovative company and ill-defined object. Daniel proposed models of open and closed innovation. You see closed versus open running along the bottom axis, and intra-organizational, inter-organizational, and public along the y-axis, and moving from more traditional models to open source public good models. Amy Edmondson is the Novartis Professor of Leadership and Management at Harvard Business School. She specializes in organizational learning, cross-boundary teaming, innovation, and eliminating fear in organizations. She's well known for her research examining psychological safety and cross-boundary teaming within and between organizations. And she's described 3 types of failure: basic, complex, and intelligent, and how to minimize unproductive failure and maximize what can be gained from it. Written a number of books: Right Kind of Wrong, The Fearless Organization, Organizational Learning and Competitive Advantage, Building the Future, Teaming, Extreme Teaming, Teaming to Innovate, and A Fuller Explanation. It has a cross-boundary teaming model for innovation that takes into account collective states to individual states under the category of emergent states, and then objects and behaviors under the category of team member interactions. Vincent Ribier is Managing Director of the Institute for Knowledge and Innovation Southeast Asia, and also involved with Bangkok University. He's the co-founder and program director of the PhD program in Knowledge and Innovation Management. He's the founder and co-program director of the Master in Business Innovation Program. These are at the Bangkok University in Thailand. And his research interests include knowledge management, innovation management, and individual, team, and computational creativity driven by artificial intelligence. He contributed a number of chapters to books, including the ones pictured here: Knowledge Management and Analytics, Creating the Discipline of Knowledge Management, In Search of Knowledge Management, Strategic Knowledge Management in Multinational Organizations, Modern Organizations and Knowledge Management, and Knowledge Management, Organizational Memory, and Transfer Behavior, among others. He's described incremental versus radical innovation, moving from known solutions with rules and procedures to where they become routine, going through an operational cycle. Eric von Krogh is professor of the Department of Management, Technology, and Economics at ETH in Zurich, Switzerland. He's chair of Strategic Management and Innovation and specializes in competitive strategy, technological innovation, and knowledge management. He teaches courses on entrepreneurial leadership, strategic management, and innovation theory and research. His books include Putting Knowledge Networks into Action, Enabling Knowledge Creation, which he co-wrote with Kazuo Ichiro and Ikujiro Nonaka, famous Japanese knowledge management thought leaders. And he also, with Johan Roos, wrote the book Organizational Epistemology. The private collective innovation model tries to build on models that are strictly private or strictly collective to create a compound model that combines the best of both. Developers use private resources to privately invest in innovation, and then they reveal the innovation essentially for a public good. So innovation is encouraged by private use and collective improvement. He also had lessons in rapid innovation that he shared from the COVID pandemic: getting a grasp on your innovation problem, making a rapid inventory of your knowledge and resources, using emerging technologies, encouraging open and cross-disciplinary collaboration, and rapidly integrating end users. Our second category today is learning themes. And these learning, and the themes for learning are learning environment, learning out loud, getting inspiration back into learning programs, types of learning, how people learn, informal learning, building a learning organization, top tools for learning, modern workplace learning, learning community growth process, data to knowledge to innovation, learning strategy elements, learning analytics, and a student's learning environment. And our thought leaders in the learning category are David Bennett, Helen Blunden, Marcia Connor, Jay Cross, David Garvin, Jane Hart, Joitske Hulsebosch, Anna Neves, Michelle Ackers, George Siemens, and Eric Tsui. David Bennett led Accenture's business intelligence, analytics, performance management, knowledge management, and data warehousing consulting practices, and his research included data monetization strategies, cognitive computing, business implications of technological innovation, and the evolving role of data scientists and other analytical talent. His specialties include analytics, cloud computing, decision-making, information technology, managing knowledge and attention, and talent management. He's written a number of books, most of which are co-written with his wife, Alex Bennett. Organizational Survival in the New World, Leading with the Future in Mind, and Decision Making in the New Reality are just a sample of books that David has written or co-written. As a model of the learning environment, where he defines learning as the creation of knowledge and knowledge as the capacity to take effective action. So along this path from learning to knowledge, making decisions, solving problems, creating ideas, and ultimately taking action, leading to high performance and a feedback loop that repeats the cycle. Helen Blunden is the founder of Activate Learning Solutions, and she specializes in workforce social learning, collaboration, working out loud, and the effective use of social media. She was the inaugural winner of the Internet Time Alliance J. Cross Memorial Award in 2016. We'll see Jay appear here in a moment, but a number of the people that I've profiled in this series are winners of the Internet Time Alliance J. Cross Award. She helps people activate the way they learn, connect, and collaborate with each other when the workplace is under constant change and transformation. She's co-written 2 books, Gourmet Teamwork, and is specifically focused on Microsoft Teams and the rest of Office 365 from Microsoft, so now called Microsoft 365, and Adopt and Embrace Microsoft Teams, a manager's guide to using Microsoft Teams. A couple of pieces of thought leadership from Helen. First, the 10 elements of learning out loud at your next conference. So she's produced this in the form of a pseudo periodic table with ingredients like LinkedIn and Yammer and blog and sketch and Twitter and so forth. So the different elements pictured here are items that you could use at a conference to both learn out loud and also to work out loud, to share with what you're learning at the conference with others who may not be there. And then she's got 24 tips to get some inspiration back into learning programs. Clearly won't read all of the 24 tips, but they're all very valuable. But we'll start with the first one, which is banishing the word mandatory, getting comfortable with exploring creative and innovative solutions, asking the hard questions to your stakeholders, and then going down to the bottom where you say feedback, 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 repeat, respect your employees, don't waste their time, make it worth their effort, and make it fun for them and for yourself too, since you'll be designing it. And then there's many others here that you could refer to. Marcia Connor is a senior advisor at Proof and Geist. She specializes in social learning. Marcia advises on how to unite technologies, analytics, and human power into the energy that drives outstanding performance. She aligns collaborative strategies with organization culture and amends skill shortages to radically change the speed of innovation. Her books are The New Social Learning, Connect, Collaborate, and Work, Learn More Now, and Creating a Learning Culture, Strategy, Technology, and Practice. Types of learning that Marcia has defined include intentional learning, which is reading, coaching, and mentoring, formal learning, which is classes, e-learning, and meetings, unexpected learning, self-study, social media, and internet surfing, and informal learning, community, exploring, and playing. I mentioned Jay Cross before. The late Jay Cross was a change agent, futurist, speaker, and author. He was viewed as the Johnny Appleseed of informal learning, meaning that he was spreading the message of informal learning and its importance as contrasted with formal learning. He helped popularize the term e-learning, which refers to essentially electronic or online learning. He championed the cause of informal learning in business settings, and he distilled lessons from cognitive science, social networking, business strategy, futures research, and psychology. A number of books that Jay wrote: Informal Learning, Real Learning, E-Learning, Aha, Learn to Be Smart, the Working Smarter Field Book, and Learnscaping, Getting Things Done in Organizations. Here's his model of real learning, how people learn, basically listing 4 components of assessing, discovering, acting, and connecting, and then the interconnections between all 4 of those components. This one is a great chart. You can come back and refer to later. Lots of information on it, but it's his essentially infographic about informal learning. And since he's one of the real champions of informal learning, this is one that's worth paying attention to. You can actually go and get a copy of this in a PDF form that you could print out because it merits further inspection. The late David Garvin was the former C. Roland Christensen Professor of Business Administration at the Harvard Business School. He was a thought leader on organizational learning. David believed that enduring success requires building a strong culture of learning in an organization. His research interests included business and management processes, the principles of organizational learning, the design and leadership of large organizations, graduate management education, and the case method pedagogy. His books that relate to learning are Learning in Action, A Guide to Putting the Learning Organization to Work, Managing Quality, the Strategic and Competitive Edge, and an article, or essentially a chapter, in the Harvard Business Review on knowledge management. He defined 3 building blocks of a learning organization, starting with a supportive learning environment, concrete learning processes, and leadership that reinforces learning. He then listed the distinguishing characteristics for each one of those building blocks and provides an example of each. Jane Hart is a speaker, writer, and modern workplace learning advisor and consultant. She focuses on helping to modernize the learning and development function. She's the founder of the Center for Learning and Performance Technologies, and she produces the popular annual Top Tools for Learning list. She specializes in modern workplace learning, learning and performance technologies, social media tools, knowledge sharing, and workplace collaboration. Written a couple of books, The Social Learning Handbook and The Modern Workplace Learning, a resource book for L&D. Her annual Top Tools for Learning is very popular, as I mentioned. Here's the most recent one from 2023, the results of her 17th annual survey of tools. And you can see that she's divided up these learning tools into the following categories: content and apps, content and development, communication and collaboration, web tools, and learning platforms. She also has a model of modern workplace learning that involves using the 4 Ds on this chart: didactics, being taught, which is formal learning; doing, which is learning from working or experiential learning; discovery, which is finding things out or informal learning; and discourse, interacting with others or social learning. So you see a lot of these themes run through our different thought leaders, talking about the same things, but maybe focusing slightly on different parts of these aspects of learning. Jessica Hulsebosch is the owner, consultant, and facilitator of NU Online. She specializes in designing and facilitating blended learning, choosing the right tools and platforms, setting up communities of practice and networks, continuous nomadic learning in organizations, hybrid meetings, and digital innovation. She helps learning professionals evolve from classical to innovative learning, creating enthusiasm through positive experiences with new technology. Her books are Blended Learning Design, all about tools, design, and facilitation; Social Learning, Get Started; and Learning in Times of Tweets, Apps, and Likes, the Influence of Social Technologies. She's defined stages in the growth process of a learning community, the stage names moving from potential to coalescing to maturing to stewarding to transforming. And then she's used the metaphor of romance here: falling in love under potential, dating under coalescing, getting married under maturing, living as a couple under stewarding, and growing old, growing young under transforming. And then she has observations made from a particular e-collaboration community for each of these stages. Anna Neves is the founder and managing director of No Man, which is a consultancy. She's the creator of the KMOL portal, the organizer of the Social Now conference, which is held every year in Portugal. She's the co-author of Social Collaboration Maturity Benchmark, the author of the biannual study on knowledge management in Portugal and Spain, and her specialties include knowledge management, communities of practice, organizational learning, social networks, social tools, internal communication, and cultural change management. The books are Knowledge Management Tools, Main Selection Criteria, Knowledge Management and Innovation in the Public Sector, and a chapter for Gaining Buy-in for KM. And one note about Anna is she likes to review books. She'll actually translate some, and she'll translate her reviews from Portuguese into English so they can be shared in a wider range of readers. Her data to knowledge to innovation model starts with seek and retrieve, moving through sense and learn, and finally share and apply, with data and information under the first stage, knowledge and ideas under the second, and actions and innovation under the third. Michelle Ackers is co-founder and director of Learning Uncut. She's an organizational learning strategist. She's a learning and development team capability builder. Ultimately, she's a strategist, mentor, facilitator, trainer, and speaker. Her expertise is in organizational learning, capability uplift for learning teams, and continuous learning skills and practices. And she was an early proponent of working out loud. Her book is Building Agility, Co-Create a Compelling Learning Strategy for an Evolving World. And for a learning strategy, she's defined these elements: the case for change, a vision, a value proposition, L&D decision principles, action pillars, and success indicators. George Siemens is an author, researcher, and theorist in the fields of learning, knowledge management, and technology. He focuses on connectivism, massive open online courses, learning analytics, human and artificial cognition, and systems. He's a professor and has been a professor at multiple universities, and he researches how people learn and build knowledge in digital environments. His books are The Handbook of Learning Analytics, The Handbook of Emerging Technologies for Learning, and Knowing Knowledge. His learning analytics sophistication model has maturity of learning analytics running along the bottom and team organizational impact along the y-axis, moving from beginning to advanced along the x-axis, and from limited to integrated along the y-axis, moving from aware to experimentation to organization, students, and faculty to organizational transformation, finally to sector transformation. Eric Tsui is an educator, consultant, author, speaker, and community leader. He's a former professor at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He's the vice president of the Hong Kong Knowledge Management Society, and he specializes in digital knowledge networks, cloud innovations, knowledge management, Industry 4.0, MOOCs, as we saw before, massive online courses, learning theories, open education, global classrooms, e-learning, innovation, digitalization, and entrepreneurship. He's written a number of book chapters. See them portrayed, the books that his chapters have appeared here, including books on knowledge management, on social technologies, on technologies and applications, on system science, wide range of books in which his chapters have appeared. He's defined a student's learning environment. So it starts with textbooks, in-person activities, online classes, papers and notes, Blackboard and tools such as those, online learning content, and books from the library. Our third category today, personal knowledge management. And the themes that we'll cover are skills for the modern workplace learning, personal knowledge management models, and personal knowledge mastery. Our thought leaders for personal knowledge management are Mark Britz, Lilia Efimova, and Harold Jarkey. Mark Britz is an author, designer, and speaker. He's a workplace performance advisor for Social by Design solutions. He helps organizations improve their results through enhanced employee connection, collaboration, and learning. He specializes in social learning, culture, organizational design, collaboration, social business, and personal knowledge management. His book is Social by Design, How to Create and Scale a Collaborative Company. A couple of pieces of thought leadership from Mark. First, his personal knowledge management model includes experience, practice, conversation, and reflection. And his 10 skills for modern workplace learning are graphed here, going from low interest to high interest along the x-axis, from low power to high power along the y-axis. And he has the 10 skills: question, research, content creation, coach, curate, share, concierge, recommend, connect, and interpret. Lilia Efimova is an author and unschooling facilitator with her own firm, InMagic. Her specialties include the social web, collaborative technologies, communities of practice, research, knowledge mapping, information management, workshop facilitation, change management, and expertise location. She's been blogging since 2002 on finding flow, growing ideas, crossing boundaries, creating spaces, and the bigger picture behind all of that. Her book is called Passionate Work, Blogging Practices of Knowledge Workers. And she's someone who likes to use graphs, in some cases hand sketch graphs, to illustrate her thinking. So her personal knowledge management models that you see here, we have other people intersecting with ideas, intersecting with me, and then the points of intersection include contact and relation management between other people and me, lurking between other people and ideas, making sense of information and organizing ideas between ideas and me, and then in the center, intersecting all three of them, conversations and collaboration. Now, moving to the right, we have her hand sketch models of ideas, conversations, and relations flowing into tasks, all under the umbrella of context, and moving along an axis of awareness to activation. And then similarly drawn on the other side, we have awareness with relations, conversations, and artifacts. So her models have evolved over time, but they conclude some of the same concepts. Harold Jarkey is a consultant, blogger, and speaker who's been active in blogging and writing for a long time. He's the principal of Jarkey Consulting. He's a partner in the Internet Time Alliance that I mentioned before that gives out the annual J. Cross Award. He helps people and businesses adapt to the network era, provides pragmatic advice on connected leadership, social learning, personal knowledge mastery, and workplace collaboration. As part of his Finding Perpetual Beta, or his Perpetual Beta series, you have Seeking, Finding, Adapting to, and Working in Perpetual Beta. And these basically are guidebook for the network era, reflections on the network era, leadership in the network era, and organizing for the network era. This is a kind of a model that you'll see frequently from Harold. He uses the same looking graph with same sort of images for a number of concepts that he relates. So they're all sort of interconnected. This is one that's a fundamental one for him about personal knowledge mastery, which is connecting work and learning. And he basically talks always about three sequences: seek, sense, and share, as being sort of the universal sequence for personal knowledge mastery. In this graph, he has on the left side getting things done, collaboration, and then moving towards learning new things, cooperation. and moving along the y-axis, starting with structured and hierarchical up through informal and networked. And then he shows on this graph 3 different types of connections amongst people, starting with work teams, which share complex knowledge and create value, communities of practice, which are trusted spaces to test new ideas and challenge assumptions, and then social networks where you have diversity of ideas and opinions and connect with others. If you follow Harold's work at all, if you read any of his many blogs, you'll see this kind of a model frequently appear, but covering a number of different topics. Our 4th category today is sense making. And our themes for sense making are the I-space model, the organizational knowing cycle, sense making metaphor, data frame theory of sense making, and the Cynefin framework. Our thought leaders for sense making are Max Boisseau, Shunwei Chu, Brenda Durbin, Gary Klein, and Dave Snowden. The late Max Boisseau was a British architect and management consultant, and he was a professor of strategic management at the ESAID Business School in Barcelona. He was known for his ideas about the information economy, the information space, social capital, and social learning theory. Max's books, Knowledge Assets, Securing Competitive Advantage in the Information Economy, Information in Organizations, the Manager as Anthropologist, Information Space, Explorations in Information Space, and Collisions and Collaboration. Well known for his I-space model. There's a couple of pictures that relate to that. So in the first one, you'll see a 3-dimensional cube model with 6 different elements in it: scanning, problem solving, abstraction, diffusion, absorption, and impacting. And then you see the axes along the cube from abstract to concrete, from undiffused to diffused, and from uncodified to codified. On the right side, you see him talking about explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Tacit being that which we have in our heads, but we haven't written down. Explicit knowledge being that which we can write down and capture. And a similar thing, he has the same axes as he has in the other model, but here he talks about proprietary knowledge, textbook knowledge, personal knowledge, common sense, news, and experience. Shunwei Chu is professor of Faculty of Information in the iSchool at the University of Toronto. His research interests include information and knowledge management, information behavior, environmental scanning, organizational learning, organizational epistemology, and early warning. He's looked at sense-making in the context of knowing organizations, and he distinguished between sensing, which is noticing potentially important messages in the environment, and making sense, which is constructing meaning from what has been sensed. His books are The Knowing Organization, Information Management for the Intelligent Organization, Web Work, The Inquiring Organization, The Strategic Management of Intellectual Capital and Organizational Knowledge, and Managing Information for the Competitive Edge. He has defined the organizational knowing cycle, which he has 3 main components in the cycle: sense making, which is taking signals from the environment and cycling between beliefs and actions; decision making, which is cycling between rules, routines, and preferences; and knowledge creating, cycling between tacit knowledge, cultural knowledge, and explicit knowledge. And then he shows external knowledge flowing in on the left side, new capabilities and innovations, and goal-directed adaptive behavior along the bottom, and then shared meanings and purpose in the top level. So this is a model for how we use personal knowledge management as part of broader knowing cycle. Brenda Durbin, the late Brenda Durbin, was a former professor of communication, and she was the former chair of the Department of Communication at The Ohio State University. She focused on the role of sense-making in dialogue and information behavior. And she was an international leader in developing sense-making theory and methodology. Her book is called Sense-Making Methodology Reader, Selected Readings of Brenda Dervin. And she created the sense-making metaphor, which includes as its elements here along the axis running y-axis space and along the x-axis time. She's got situation, which includes history, experience, horizons, constraints, barriers, habits, and skills. Context, which is power structures and dynamics, domain knowledge systems, culture, and communities. Bridges, which are ideas, cognitions, and thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and values, feelings, emotions, intuitions, memories, stories, and narratives. And moving across that bridge essentially are sense-making and unmaking, with verbings, procedurings, and strategies and tactics. And then she identifies gaps in the sense-making, which include questions and confusions, muddles and riddles, and angst. And then moving across the bridge to reach relevances, criteria, and attributes used to evaluate how blank is served or impeded. Sources include channels, people, media, and institutions. And finally, you have outcomes and situations, which are helps and facilitations, hurts and hindrances, and consequences, impacts, and effects. Gary Klein is the president of Shadowbox LLC. He's developed cognitive methods and models for the following items: a data frame theory of sense-making, management by discovery model of planning in complex settings, the triple path model of insight, the pre-mortem method of risk assessment, cognitive task analysis for uncovering the tacit knowledge that goes into decision-making, Shadowbox training approach for cognitive skills. So quite a few methods and models that Gary has helped develop. He's pioneered the naturalistic decision-making, or NDM, movement, and he helped initiate the new discipline of macrocognition. Written a number of books: Seeing What Others Don't, The Remarkable Ways We Gain Insights, Sources of Power, How People Make Decisions, Streetlights and Shadows, which is also about sense-making and searching, The Power of Intuition, Working Minds, Linking Expertise and Naturalistic Decision-Making, Decision-Making Models and Methods, Naturalistic Decision-Making, and Snapshots of the Mind. His data frame theory of sense-making starts with elaborating a frame in the elaboration cycle, moving it into the data frame, recognizing and constructing a frame, managing attention, defining, connecting, and filtering the data, questioning a frame, and reframing, and all part of a cycle where you go between the different elements on this slide. Dave Snowden, who is well known in our field as one of the key thought leaders, is the founder and chief scientific officer of the Cynefin Company. And his specialties include sense-making, knowledge management, complexity science applied to organizations, and narrative. He works on the application of natural sciences to social systems through the development of a range of methods, and that he has helped develop the SenseMaker software suite. So not only do they write and talk about sense-making, they actually have a software tool that helps with sense-making. And he describes himself as a proud curmudgeon and pragmatic cynic. His book on Cynefin, Weaving Sense-Making into the Fabric of Our World, is an important one on that topic. He's the inventor, essentially, of Cynefin, and it has become widely adopted and reused. He's also contributed chapters to these two other books, Successful Knowledge Leadership Principles and Practice, and Measuring the ROI of Knowledge Management. His Cynefin framework, for which he's probably best known, it comes from a Welsh word that signifies the multiple intertwined factors in our environment and our experience that influence us, how we think, interpret, and act in ways we can never fully understand. And the model has gone through a number of evolutions, so you've seen it probably in different forms over the years. It usually has these four quadrants that are not in a firm matrix format, but more in this curved line format to show that they're not hard and fast lines. And as it's continued to evolve, the terms that go into the 4 quadrants have changed. But the current version, as of now, has got the terms of exaptive practices, which is the complex domain, good practices, which is the complicated domain, clear, which is best practices, chaotic, which is novel practices. So in each of these, you see a sequence that goes, in the first case for complex, from probe, sense, and respond. Under complicated, sense, analyze, and respond. Under clear, sense, categorize, respond. And under chaotic, act, sense, and respond. So they're all similar, but slightly different. And he talks about constraints in each of the 4 quadrants. So for the complex, there are enabling constraints. For the complicated, there are governing constraints. For the chaotic, there are no effective constraints. And for the clear, there are fixed constraints. So Dave has continued to evolve the model. He's written extensively about it. It's at the core of what his company, the Kinevin company, does. And our 5th and final category is story and narrative. Our themes are lessons about stories, maturity of organizational storytelling, spotting a business story, avoiding change management failure using business narrative, the springboard story, story thinking cycle, knowledge fairs, and the 7-element structure for a story. Our thought leaders for story and narrative are Madeline Blair, Joelle Brown Grant, Sean Callahan, Steve Denning, John Lewis, Leslie Schneier, and Victoria Ward. Madeline Blair is the principal at Pelleray LLC. She's a faculty member of the Columbia University Information and Knowledge Solutions Program, IKNS. She's also a TV host of the show Unlocked. She's a resilience mentor, speaker, author, and executive advisor. And she has experience in knowledge management and the use of story and narrative in business with an emphasis on narrative intelligence. Her books are Unlocked, Discover How to Embrace the Unexpected, Essays in 2 Voices, Dialogues of Discovery, Writing the Current, How to Deal with the Daily Deluge of Data, and Wake Me Up When the Data is Over, How Organizations Use Stories to Drive Results. She has lessons about stories that she has shared, stories and the individual, stories and culture, and stories of the community. So under stories and the individual, the quest for personal identity is a story of stories. Our identities come alive through telling and retelling our stories. Under stories and culture, stories and their exchange create our relationship reality, and the genre of the stories told generates culture and vice versa. And under stories of the community, stories are told and retold in response to real community needs, desires, dreams, and nightmares. Stories are what the community needs to know it knows, and what it is trying to forget it knows. And stories can die out, and they can be silenced. Joelle Brown Grant is a storytelling strategist, a user experience architect, a design thinking specialist, and a knowledge management professional. He has experience in enterprise learning, change management, and business storytelling. He facilitates workshops on the power of storytelling to teach, engage, empower, motivate, and connect learners, leaders, groups, and professional communities across diverse industries and professions. In 2 books, Knowledge Management and the Practice of Storytelling, the competencies and skills needed for a successful implementation, and assessment strategies for knowledge organizations, working methods for knowledge management. Defined a maturity of organizational storytelling, starting with incipient, moving through intermittent, through intermediate, through rising, through consolidated. So in the incipient, there's random storytelling, no formal process. In intermittent, they're sometimes captured and shared. In intermediate, they're recognized as being important, In Rising, there's a formal storytelling operation, which includes training and production. And then consolidated storytelling is part of the strategic planning and vision of the organization. Sean Callahan is the founder and director at Anecdote International in Australia. He specializes in storytelling, strategic communications, leadership development, and culture change. Sean's specialty is helping technically minded leaders find and tell stories that engage the emotions of and ultimately inspire action from their technically minded audiences. Putting Stories to Work, Mastering Business Storytelling, Storifying In-Person and Virtual Events, Character Trumps Credentials, 170 questions that help leaders find and tell great stories, and The Ultimate Guide to Anecdote Circles, a practical guide to facilitating storytelling and story listening. A couple of pieces of thought leadership from Sean. First of all, spotting a business story. So there's a sequence of related events that start with time and place. And if you have time and place and character and an element of surprise leading to a business point, that could be a business story. Second is avoiding change management failure using business narrative. So it's an iterative approach, starting with preparing your sponsors, envisage the future broadly, story evidence for change, engage staff in process, and then there's discovery, a series of actions including monitoring, sense making, and action. Steve Denning is a consultant, speaker, and author on leadership, storytelling, and management. He's a senior contributor to Forbes magazine, and Steve was the former program director of knowledge management at the World Bank. He works with organizations on leadership, innovation, business agility, and organizational storytelling. Steve's written all of these books: The Springboard, How Storytelling Ignites Action in Knowledge Era Organizations; Squirrel Incorporated, A Fable of Leadership Through Storytelling; Storytelling in Organizations, Why Storytelling is Transforming 21st Century Organizations and Management; The Leader's Guide to Storytelling, Mastering the Art and Discipline of Business Narrative; The Secret Language of Leadership, How Leaders Inspire Action Through Narrative; The Leader's Guide to Radical Management, Reinventing the Workplace in the 21st Century; The Age of Agile, How Smart Companies are Transforming the Way Work Gets Done; and his most recent one, Reinventing Capitalism in the Digital Age. The Springboard story is one that Steve has talked about for a long time, and one that he used successfully when he was in charge of knowledge management at the World Bank, and what he used to get that program off the ground. And he has explained in his writing and speaking how this works. Basically, he's saying if you try to convince somebody of something, try to make them do something that you do by trying to explain with a series of facts. So in his first panel in the upper left, you see, let me explain the 16 dimensions of knowledge management. And then that just causes people's eyes to glaze over. They're listening to explanations. It's tiring. They can't follow it. They don't understand it. Despite the fact that it might be very factual and valid, it's still wearisome for the listener. Then he has the second one about showing you a chart. Let me show you a chart. So there's pictures, there's arrows, there's diagrams, there's flows. So he thinks maybe that would be more influential than just showing lists of terms, but ultimately not. So then he changed direction into telling a story, where instead of let me show you a chart, he says, let me tell you a story. And listening to a story is exhilarating and refreshing. So now the person who's listening says something interesting, I hope. So as long as you tell the story in such a way that it draws the listener in and they put themselves in it, you end up having a much better chance of getting what you want to happen than if you try the more traditional methods of facts and charts. So instead, he told a story which was very specific in 19 words. In June 1995, a health worker in Kamana, Zambia, logged into the CDC website in Atlanta and got the answer to a question on how to treat malaria. That was a story of a real thing that happened. And when his listening audience heard that, their response to it was not to have their eyes glaze over. It was to say, how could possibly work? How can we make this work more broadly? It caused them to think about how this could be more broadly applied, and ultimately led to the launch of his knowledge management program. John Lewis is the chief story thinker, owner, and CKO of the Explanation Age LLC. He's a consultant, speaker, author, and coach on knowledge management, organizational learning, leadership, and story thinking, and he's the former chief knowledge officer of SearchBlock Software. 3 books: The Explanation Age, Inspiring Visualization of the New Learning Organization; Story Thinking, Transforming Organizations for the Fourth Industrial Revolution; and The Intelligent Social Journey, Foundation for the Possibilities That Are You. His definition of story thinking, he's created this story thinking cycle, which includes ideation, expectation, affirmation, automation, disruption, and investigation. In each one of those phases of the cycle, you see the different components. So he talks about story thinking being something as a way of applying the principles of narrative more broadly than just storytelling. Leslie Schneier is the former Senior Knowledge and Learning Specialist of the World Bank Group, so she worked with Steve Denning at the World Bank. Her specialties include online facilitation, collaborative technologies, communities of practice, narrative and storytelling, workshop facilitation, change management, and thematic and knowledge networks. She's written book chapters for Bursting the Big Data Bubble, Intelligent Learning Infrastructure for Knowledge-Intensive Organizations, and Getting Change Right, How Leaders Transform Organizations from the Inside Out. Leslie was responsible for creating something called knowledge fairs when she was at the World Bank, and she talked about how that happened. They decided on 4 tracks: collaboration, grassroots practitioners, KM practices, and platforms, that is, knowledge hubs around particular themes. The 4 tracks and the 30 topics became 16 concurrent sessions held across 2 days. Responses to the announcement of this knowledge fair came in thick and fast, and they had to close registration for on-site participation once they reached 300, the limit of their largest conference room. They had 300 on-site and 200 online participants, and the idea of the peer-to-peer workshop was generating tremendous buzz, and there was a lot of interest in the topics. So she had to fight to get this approved and fight to get it done, but it ended up being very successful. And why is that? Because people had the chance to go around and talk to each other and see what they were doing and learn from each other and tell stories to each other and learn in that process. And that's far more powerful potentially than sitting in a normal conference listening to a series of speakers. And our final thought leader is Victoria Ward, who's co-founder and chief of ideas at Jigsaw Foresight. She works at the forward edge of organizational change, narrative at work, and knowledge management. She focuses on reconfiguring the collaborative workplace and the conditions needed for effective decision-making, specializing in retrospectives and reviews. Her book is called Story Guide: Building Bridges Using Narrative Techniques. And Victoria has defined a 7-element structure for a story. So using this form, you could fill in notes based on the story you're planning to tell, starting with the landscape, setting the scene in time and space, then moving to the dwelling place, the precise location where action occurred. If you refer back to the springboard story example that Steve Denning provided, he paints the picture with a very specific time and place, and that's part of what is in here with Victoria's structure. Characters, the cast list, descriptive attributes and roles in the story, the challenge, the problem or task that triggered the action, the challenge, the problem or task that triggered the action, the action, I covered challenge there twice. Action is the sequence of events before, during, and after your turning point. The resolution, ending the including lesson learned or message, and images and objects to help you remember and retell the story. So by using these 7 elements that are included in this structure, then you can ultimately use an effective story to influence action, to prompt change, to affect the culture, the variety of things that stories are good at. That wraps up our series on the 120 thought leaders. We've divided those up into these 4 webinars. We hope that you've enjoyed them. Hope that you'll go back. And for each of the 120 thought leaders that I profiled, you'll take a look at what they've actually written and done. We can't delve into it in detail in these webinars, but you can go back and read the books that I've shown. You can go and reference their written materials, their written and spoken presentations, and take advantage of the wealth of knowledge that these people have shared. I also want to offer you a chance to share my knowledge, which is the 3 books that I've published to date for Lucidea, with the 4th one coming later this year. Those books are Proven Practices for Promoting a Knowledge Management Program, which helps you in selling KM within your organization. The 5 C's of Knowledge Management, which talks about the different parts that make up knowledge management, categorized into the 5 categories. And then my most recent one, the Knowledge Nuggets, 100 KM infographics, where we go through and talk about many different important topics, including KM fundamentals, steps to KM success, tips, tricks, and techniques, maxims, communication and collaboration, and communities of practice, all included in this book. And you can get a free copy of each one of those at the links that you see here. I encourage you to come back to Lucidea's website and request your copies there. So that wraps up our webinar for today, and let me turn it back over to Brad.
Thank you, Stan, for the wonderful presentation. And if anyone has any questions about any of our software or our company, or would like to reach out to Stan directly, the contact details are listed on the screen. And please stay tuned for more content related to future series. And please feel free to visit our website for to look at the content related to this series and past series that Stan has mentioned, and the books as well. On behalf of the Lucidea team, I thank you all for attending today, and until next time, thank you.